You're listening to Off to Market with Scott Farley and Hamish Chadwick.
Hi, I'm Hamish and this is Off to Market, and today's guest is Allan Morris. Allan at the moment is working as a CEO for Alvi Fishing Reels, but he's got a incredibly varied background. So I'll let Allan explain where he's come from and what it is you do exactly.
Thanks, Hamish.
That's all right.
There is lots of things. What have I done? Been in Australia since 2006 and worked for a number of wide varied companies, either as CFO, CEO. I've contracted to people and advised them on branding, exporting, mergers and acquisitions, culture, recruitment. So pretty much I do all sorts of weird and wonderful things for a lot of people.
Jack of all trades.
Yeah, jack of all trades. Some things that some people, it's hard for some businesses to basically do some of the things that I can do. Lack of experience, sometimes lack of knowledge, and coming in and helping people do those things is a pretty rewarding, and pretty exciting thing to do.
And that's why I wanted to talk to you today, because obviously the purpose of this podcast is to help people that have got new inventions or new ideas. They want to commercialise products. So you're very well placed to give advice in that sense. So that's why I wanted to specifically talk to you about what you've seen over the years, being in the trenches, what works and what doesn't work. So what can you share some stories with us about what you've seen? Obviously some of the companies our target audience for this podcast is what you call startup. Yeah. But they're obviously people that have maybe got a product which has the potential to go global. There are some clients that we have dealt with which these turn into massively profitable products. So they're not all sort of backyard operations. So please share some stories. What have you seen over the years that works?
In the last couple of years, I've had the privilege to work with a lot of startups and new businesses in the digital space and in the conventional space. So currently working with some app developers who have an app basically a social media app, one of a better word. I've worked with male cosmetic companies, female cosmetic companies, female beauty salon businesses, female safety wear businesses, electric skateboards, normal skateboards, clothing, fishing. Wow, I'm trying to think. Digital marketing agency. That's fun. That was real fun. What else? Yeah, basically standard retailers in consumer goods. And I think a lot of the things is a lot of businesses lose sight of what they're trying to achieve, and that's not a money issue or a product issue. That's just a lot of people go into business because they're trying to achieve something or trying to grow something. And I think sometimes as a business gets more and more successful, the money takes over, and where I see a lot of businesses lose it is that emotional attachment to why they're actually trying to do something, and the reason why they're going through all the crap, pardon the expression, but all the crappy days, all the challenges, getting funding, getting product past first stage. A lot of times it's not money, it's that desire to achieve, to create something that nobody has done before. And a lot of businesses do, especially a lot of business owners, they lose that sight. And that's probably the most important business driver. I've had the privilege to work with a lot of exceptionally talented people, and one of the first questions I do normally ask them is, why are you doing this? Because if you're doing it for the money, that's okay, but be honest with yourself and saying this is a 3 and 5 year deal to basically make as much cash as I possibly can. But if you're doing it for some other reason, then be cognizant of it, because starting a new business or a new product, a new brand it's bloody hard work. Yeah,
no, we were just talking about that before. You and I were just having a chat about how egos sometimes get in the way, and obviously we've seen that a bit with some of the clients we have dealt with, not in a bad way, but you get like you were saying before, you do lose sight. So what's your advice in that sense? Like, how can someone, when they start small and they start to see things grow, what are some strategies you might suggest to put into place to? I mean, obviously you can have business plans that are 1 to 3 to 5 years, but obviously those sort of things can get put in the drawer. What are some of the tactics that you've seen it work?
It's constantly reminding yourself, and it sounds really trite and really cliche, but constantly reminding yourself on a day-to-day basis why you're doing it. Because there are a lot of brands. Sometimes people get obsessed with That's right. And to take it into context, I worked with a brand before where there was this desire to basically make, to grow the brand, but to keep it very niche and very, very focused and very kind of boutique. Well, that's a really hard thing to do. It's like asking, and we had a joke about it before, saying asking to have a bespoke, mass-produced iPhone.
Yes.
It's doable, but there is a price for doing it, and sometimes there are things that you need to compromise, and where let me paraphrase it, I'm not explaining myself properly, is there are times where business owners need to accept that if a business is going exceptionally well, it is time for them to basically step back and let people who are either more experienced or more qualified or emotionally better suited to dealing with some of the issues that pop up, or accept the fact that when a business, when it hits a certain size, keep it at that. There's nothing wrong with having a small business that makes really well and having a small makes good money, is quite good, quite emotionally satisfying, but it's only based 2, 3, 4 people. In fact, that's arguably that's a more that's a better lifestyle than a business that's turning over 50, 100 million, employing 100 people, and making a lot of money, and then finding out that you're beholden to the shareholder expectations, private equity expectations, stakeholder expectations, staff expectations, supplier expectations, government expectations in some cases. It's really, really hard. There is a business I work with, and hopefully she won't mind me mentioning it. It's a female safety wear business, safety boots. It's a business called She-Wear, run by a very, very talented and capable lady called Stacey. And what amazes me is she has such a drive and such a just an expectation that she can make the business a success, despite all of the hurdles and the challenges that she has. The amount of disgraceful misogyny that is still in 2019 business is phenomenal. But she continually fights against it and succeeds, and she has bloody good product in an area that is massively underrepresented. My hat goes, I take my hat off to her every time I talk to her, because I think she does a cracking job in a very male dominated, arguably misogynist industry.
So because that's the other thing, we often, the clients, the people we speak to, growth, that obviously in the initial stages of product development, growth is everything to them, because it's growth in customer base, growth in the numbers, so growth in revenue, growth in market share, growth in where they're located, but that can obviously be an enormous problem. So how do you specifically manage growth in terms of building a business? Because obviously, like you said before, we've seen that, if you increase, like some people have said, I want to get to 10 staff, and you've got to ask the question, why 10 staff? Because that will mean that we're doing these numbers. Well, but then you've got 10 people you're accountable for, as well as yourself. So what have you seen? How have you dealt with that over the years, where you've gone into a business and maybe not downsized it? That's not the right word, but do you see instances where a business can be better if it gets smaller? Is that a philosophy that you've seen?
Very much so. Very much so. I think sometimes businesses overly complicate things. You look at some businesses. I've worked with some businesses that are just one product, and there is this fear that we've only got one product. So what happens if the market falls out and we can't sell this product anymore? And they look to do basic product extensions, whether it be different sizes of the same product, or going into the obvious one is people tend to go into apparel, into clothing, because they think it's easy, and apparel companies go into hard goods because they think it's easy, a lot of businesses go into it because they take this attitude about how hard can it be. It's hard. It's really, really hard, and some products don't translate across category, and it's okay to just have one product and be really, really good at it, but on the flip side is to be constantly use the word, it's constantly innovating and saying, well, what does the consumer want next? A really good example, and again it's a cliche example, is my opinion of iPhone is, it's a good, Apple have done a great job with the iPhone. It's a great piece of marketing, and there's lots and lots of product enhancement that come out every year, but I think 90% of us use a phone, or our phone, for a similar kind of thing. We take and receive calls, we take and receive messages or emails, we check social media, we use the camera. After that, I think looking ourselves in the mirror, I think a lot of people wouldn't use 90% of the other functionality of the apps that are on an iPhone. But we all have one, and we all basically clamour for the new iPhone whatever, X1, XB 2.0, purely because Apple have told us that it's got new added functionality.
Yes, and that, which is an interesting concept that we should step into next is brand. We were just talking about brand before, and how some companies will say one thing and do another, or say one thing and do nothing. What have you seen in terms of branding? What do you see as this is what I talk to clients about, is the mechanics of brand, which is how do you live it? What have you seen? What are some examples where brand does work and where it doesn't work?
I think a lot of brands are. I find the and again, apologies for using the being genuine and being real, authentic, which everyone says is everyone's authentic and genuine and real. I
just want someone fake now.
Yeah, sometimes fake. Being honest and saying, "Oh, look, we're fake," is sort of sometimes not. But and when you look at especially e-commerce and social media, there is this perception to have these glorified, polished, slick, whether it be flat images or whether it be video or whatever, or this proposition, whereas sometimes the more genuine the content, the more less polished the content, the better. One brand I was involved with, the guys who ran in male cosmetics, the guys who ran the marketing department, the branding department, they did an exceptionally great job of keeping the content, the polished unpolished, I used to call it. It's it was genuine. It was really well professionally done, shot, but it didn't look like it was of production quality, if that makes sense.
Yes.
They were, it looked genuine, and those guys, I take my hat off, and some of the most, in that business in particular, some of the most talented people I worked with, made that business a success, and I think and they should take a lot of credibility for that. Other things I've seen is where brands just lose their way and pretend to be, especially businesses that start in that, what I want to call youth area, and I've worked with a number of businesses that have used shock and awe as a marketing tool, whether it be profanity, whether it be overly sexualized image, drug use, crazy stuff, all these kind of things, and shock and awe is great. There are some well-known examples of people who've used shock and awe as a marketing concept and done an exceptionally good job. But where do you go?
Well, that's obviously got a time limitation, though.
Yeah, and that's the problem with some brands. Some brands think you can carry on shocking and awing. Awing, I suppose, is one expression, but shocking. And there comes a point where how many times does somebody have to juggle a chainsaw before it becomes normal? I mean, at what point does the shock value become the normal for the brand? And I think when you're building your brand on that, is to constantly evolve and say, to become more shocking is really difficult. And some businesses think they can continue to do it. Other businesses lose their track, and you see it where businesses are. And it's funny, in one particular business where as the owners and the founders got older, you could tell the business lost some of its spark and creativity, because at one point they were young and and a little bit carefree and on the edge, and then as life went on and they became in more stable relationships and possibly got married and had children and settled down, it started coming through in the creativity and the product proposition and the way the business conducted itself externally, and it lost its edge.
And is that because, which would be interesting for our listeners, do you see that happening? That's obviously a situation where you don't necessarily have a board of directors, perhaps. You've got a company that's run by two, so you've got two personalities. And then the personality of those people transfers across the business. Yeah. So what would your advice be for if they've got because that's the thing. I mean, you've got companies that have great products that if they're led by one or two personalities, How do you manage that? Where's the balance? What would be your advice to an entrepreneur that has to look at this maybe for the next 20 years if that's their goal?
It's really bloody hard. I've seen businesses that have brought in executive boards and external advisors, and have loaded themselves up with too much grey hair, too much process. Whereas being very agile and dynamic. And when I say agile and dynamic, quick to change, knowing the fact that they've screwed something up and gone, you know what, I've screwed this up, I'm going to change it. Whereas if you've got board of directors and reports and structures and all that governance stuff is really important. But for businesses that are growing, sometimes you want to push that governance off for as long as you possibly can. On the flip side is when sometimes knowing when to, pardon the expression, sell out and cash your chips in on a business that's growing really well is key important. I've seen some businesses that have gone through really significant growth at the front end, and they have an impression that the growth won't stop. Well, it does, and especially in fashion or in stuff that's very taste based. Fashion drops off. I mean, I've worked in male cosmetics, and the male cosmetics arena has had the benefit of this upsurge in barbershops in the last 10 years. It's been fantastic. It's more barbershops than coffee shops. I mean, it's just it's wonderful for the industry. Will it continue? Possibly not. But you can't. Do we go back to those horrible days of the early 90s, which I'm old enough to remember, where the young Kemp scruffy dreadlock look was vogue, rather than the clean cut polished look, which has been relatively vogue for the last couple of years. That's a hard one to call. And I wouldn't be arrogant enough to say I would call it one way or another. But sometimes when you're hot, that's the time to basically go, you know what, I'll do something else, or just be confident that you say, well, no, I'm going to stick to doing X, Y, and Z, and that's what we do. There's some cracking businesses in Australia in particular that have just done the same thing for the last 100 and whatever years. I mean, look at things like Vegemite, which is the obvious one. Look at Lucas Pawpaw. I mean, it's just a red tub of fermented pawpaw. But I think
it's a global brand really now.
But probably every bathroom in Australia has had one in it at some point, if it doesn't have one now. Everyone's seen that little red tube, or that little red, or whatever it is.
Red and black
tube, and it's just, that's a one product company. And they've done a fantastic job.
So you say focus is really what you'd say is your advice for many companies, is to just focus, don't diversify,
and don't kid yourselves. That you can put your logo on anything and it will sell. I mean, there's some very, very well known surf brands down in the Gold Coast that have failed not failed, they're just not the businesses they were, because they thought they could just propagate their branding, and how hard can it be? There's a lot of people in Burleigh Heads who are ex-surf company. Right. That's the way it is, and they've done some really well. I mean, the other one is what amazes me all the time is that, as I said at the start, I've had the benefit to work for some guys in the digital space, whether it be digital marketing or whether it be app developers, supremely hugely massive amount of ability and credibility, and I think the thing for especially I find it, especially with at mid-layer management or executive management, is sometimes we shouldn't pretend that we know what we're talking about. I had a conversation with somebody at a digital marketing agency where there was you sit in a meeting with them talking about how to market a business digitally, and everyone's nodding their head because all of these anagrams and these kind of 3-letter words are being chucked around, and everyone pretends to know what they mean, and they all come out of the meeting and they go, I have no idea what that meant, but it looks really cool. And and sometimes people just pretend to know. So maybe I'm different, but I regularly admit I haven't got I don't know 95% of the things that go on in those kind of spaces, but I ask people who do, and I trust people's opinion. I think that again, especially digital is moving so fast, is that people pretend to know what's driving, how to drive digital business, and it's I think sometimes there's a lot of the BS that goes along on that in that area.
Yeah, no, and that's the other problem too, which I would like to impress upon our listeners, people that have got products in development, is what's your advice in terms of taking advice? I mean, I think that's when it comes to things like managing your own ego. I mean, if it could be very dangerous if you sit there and say, oh yeah, I'll just pretend to know because I don't want to look like a fool.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the people that develop products they don't come out of small business, they don't come out of big business, they come out of an industry. They might be a plumber, or they might be a school teacher, or they could just be someone who's worked in government. They've just got a fantastic idea, and all of a sudden they're thrust into this world where they're just expected to know every acronym and every buzzword.
Yeah, and
so really it's just an admission that
don't. It's okay to be dumb in these areas, and in fact, the more dumb you are, the better. And sometimes getting people to explain it to you like you're a 3-year-old actually cuts through a lot of the garbage. And the other thing about, especially in the whole branding and marketing, is, and I know Hamish, you agree with this as well, is that all that branding and marketing is all well and good, but if it's not converting to revenue or not converting to what you want to achieve, and that's important, and I'll come back to that in a minute, then it's just noise. And people do a lot of marketing and branding and basically saying, we've got so much engagement and we've got so many likes and we've done, our net promoter score is X, Y, and Z, and that's all fantastic. But how many units did you sell? Or if your objective is to drive, to have your product placed somewhere, then don't kid yourself and just say, well, my objective is to basically have my product at state of origin. Apologies for all the people who don't know what state of origin is. State of origin, or the Rugby World Cup, or the World Cup final. I want it and then have the at half time. Well, if that's your objective, go with it. But if your objective is to sell more units, then that's what you want it to do. And there's a lot of businesses that will tell you need to market in a certain way, or change this or change that, and that's great. But if it doesn't increase your volume or increase your sales or your profits, why are you doing it? I think also as well, just to caveat that, is some people think all marketing has to have an ROI. Well, and apologies to the insult that goes out now, is that a lot of marketing is just throwing excrement at a wall and hoping it sticks. But you need to do that. Sometimes being on, we talk about social media as a thing. Sometimes you need to be in social media just to make your brand look relevant, and basically, because if you're not doing social media in this day and age, this particular bugbear of mine is that people think you don't have a brand. Well, that's not true, but that's just public perception. People, you have to do things it's like mowing your lawn and painting your fence and and making your house look tidy. It's just to make sure, it's to keep your brand value at a level. But sometimes that activity doesn't increase your brand value or your brand proposition or the ability to sell, but still keeps you in the game. There's a cost to play, and a lot of social media is a cost to play. You have to interact, so you won't get ROI on it, but you'll still be in the game.
Well, and I think that's the critical thing, is it's not ROI, it's ROA, which is return on activity, rather than return on investment, which is, say you put $20 into an ad, you expect to make, so let's just say $40 back from that. But like you're saying, I agree, you've just got to be in it to win it almost, just to get a presence. Because if you look at a lot of big brands and how they've succeeded, they trade on history. You can't buy history, you can't really put a figure on how do you build up history. You've just got to decide to do something and do it for a long time. We'll do it for at least a period of time.
And do it well.
And be consistent. So,
absolutely. And consistently do it well. So,
which is also another interesting point we were talking about with a business that we won't mention, but you were saying, you said they had a new logo designed and a mission statement or something. Mission, what was it? Value proposition. And you told me what that was, and I sort of thought about the business. I only know them from I know who they are. Let's put it that way. When you told me what it was, I thought, how I don't see that.
And that happens a lot.
I don't see how that translates into how they operate.
is sometimes getting somebody to tell you what your value proposition is. If you can't tell people what their and I personally I have a problem with vision and mission statements, because sometimes they can be there's lots of business language and lots of terminology and jargon where ultimately you're there to do it can be simplified and distilled down to a simple concept. And a business that does it exceptionally well is as Hamish mentioned at the start, is a business I'm working with at the moment called Alvi Reels, and Alvi is just a better way to fish. Now you might disagree with that, but this brand proposition of that statement and the way and the product all lives up to basically making it a better way to fish. Doesn't mean you're going to catch more fish. Doesn't mean it doesn't mean you'll have a better time fishing, but we think it's a better way to fish because of the way the product is designed and how it works and basically how that product you interact with that product. What a better word. Whereas some brands, just I'm trying to think of somebody else that's got a really simple proposition. I can't remember who the coffee business is that basically just says good coffee, 7-Eleven. Now, is
it really?
No, well, I mean, but talk about they've just done. We do good coffee. Well, you don't. You do reasonably priced coffee.
Passable. Satisfactory is a good word.
But you'll remember, and I was talking about another business which I have nothing to do with actually at the moment, but it always makes me laugh and it always gives me a chuckle. Is Frank Walker at National Tiles, and a very an interesting radio advert with an interesting man with an interesting delivery that everybody I think that's right. Is that there is an attitude that Frank has a very distinctive voice, but everybody remembers it. And whether you like Frank or you don't like Frank, and there were some very strong opinions in the place I was before I came to see Hamish today about Frank Walker, but we all know who Frank is, and we all he's immersed ourselves in our life whether we like it or not. That's Frank. I mean, that's Frank Walker at National Tiles has done a reasonably good job.
Yes. Well, and that's again leading with personality. So that's it's obviously led from the top down. It's all about Frank Walker.
Yeah.
And every time I would say that word, you would know exactly what I'm talking about.
Jerry Harvey did another. He's done another a good job as well. And he's not as active as he was, but everyone knows who Jerry Harvey is, and everyone knows Harvey Norman. Yeah. Harvey Norman. So it's that's where that proposition's come really well. But don't overcomplicate your marketing message or your proposition or your internally as well. It's just be honest with why you're doing it. It's as I said, there's been I've worked with some really really good businesses, and sometimes there's people many years ago I worked with a business that spent a day trying to work out its mission statement. So you got 6-7 executives off-site, very expensive. It's always at a nice resort. It's always sunny.
Of course.
It's always got a free bar. There's always nice food and stuff. And you got 6 or 7 executives plus a couple of external advisors arguing over the right terminology for the internal mission statement. What a complete waste of money.
It is.
And sometimes the simpler the better. And if you have to basically look at a dictionary to understand what the words are in a mission statement, fail, massive fail. Keep it easy, and be honest. Again, as I said, we touched on at the start. If you're there to make money in the next 3 years, that's the objective, and that's okay. It's okay to be there and be cynical and say, I'm here to make X thousand, $100,000, $1 million.
Yep.
But be honest about it. Don't kid yourselves that you're doing it for any other reason, any philanthropic reason or profit with a purpose. You're there to make as much money as you can in the shortest period of time. It focuses the mind, and it focuses your team mind, because your team will know, if you do have a team, that you're there for one reason and one reason only. And involve the team in that, and be honest about what you're doing. It's okay. It's those kind of missions and drives. It's okay to be there for the money.
Okay.
But don't lie about it.
No, and just an interesting question too. You mentioned involving the team. So I think that with a lot of entrepreneurs, they're very close to their product. It's a very emotional journey because it's their idea, it's their process. They've been through it all. They learn things very quickly. But you said to involve the team. Is that another bit of advice you'd give to entrepreneurs? Is to don't don't sort of keep your cards too close to your chest, like do share information. Obviously there's things like, if it is sensitive intellectual property, we're always about, putting NDAs out there. But that's obviously something that you would advocate for and say, do that,
I do think
get
so.
advice.
There is the sensitivity about IP, but you've also, I look at the IP and you say, once you get to a certain market penetration, there are people far more intelligent than you that will always be able to reverse engineer your product. So you can have as much IP protection as you want, but there comes times where somebody will rip you off, and then how good your IP protection and your patent and ultimately your legal team, who you're gonna, will then basically show its true cards. But with the team is, the more honest you are and the more open you are about information, the better. And there's nothing wrong with being open and honest about the performance of your business and what you're trying to achieve. In fact, the more honest you are, the better. Big mistake of mine. I used to be terrible for relinquishing information and basically and involving not only the teams I worked with but other people about what information was going, because I always thought it used to be commercial in confidence. Well, it is. A lot of information is commercial in confidence. But if you can't trust, you trust your team. If you think about it this way, you trust the people that work for you or work with you. You trust them to basically turn up on time. You trust them to put 100% effort in. Some people you give signing authority to, so you allow them to spend, whether it's 5,000, 10,000, and bigger companies 20,000, 100,000. I've been in companies where signing limits have been $250,000, $500,000. But then you won't tell them how much money you're making, or what the performance of the business is, or where the market spread is, or and some information is like, well, why wouldn't you tell people? You trust people. You trust people to interact with your customers on a face to face and be the point of service delivery for some businesses is somebody that be lucky to get minimum wage. And so you trust them to have that customer engagement with you, but you won't trust them to tell you how much money that you made today, or what the revenue was for that store on that day, on that day. It's a scary proposition, really. I'm not saying you should be all like some, pardon the terrible analogy, like some hippie commune where you're sharing information left, right and everywhere, but be open and honest about what you're trying to achieve, because the people who work for you will probably have a lot better ideas and a lot more kind of sense on basically how to achieve your product, how to achieve your game, your goals, than you will. And if they don't, then you're all in the same boat, really.
So Allan, tell me, why do you do what you do and the way you do it? That's a very funny way of asking that question, but you seem to be across a lot of industries and work with a lot of different businesses. I suppose it's good for you. I mean, I do the same thing as in my role. I work with lots and lots of different sorts of businesses. But why do you do what you do?
That's a really good question, and and it's probably a question my wife asks me on a regular basis. Or why do you put yourself through a lot of the stress and a lot of the pressures? I thoroughly enjoy it. There are, like I said, I can honestly say, hand on heart, of all the business, and I mean all of the businesses I work for, I've worked for some really highly capable and intelligent people who I've learned so much from. And when I carry on meeting people in all the businesses we talked about before, whether they be some really capable business leaders, whether it be in female beauty, whether it be in safety wear, whether it be in retail, whether it be in all the businesses, the app guys, the digital marketing guys, these guys are really far more capable, intelligent, and proficient than me. And I don't. Every time I meet these guys and work with them, I learn so much, and I thoroughly enjoy it. I really do enjoy it. And the thing that, a bit of blatant self-promotion is, if I look back in all the businesses that I've worked with, as I said before, I've worked in action sports, I've worked in male cosmetics, female cosmetics. They're not an area of specialty that I know or I've had experience with. I'm an accountant by trade. I did my UK CPA equivalent back in, and don't laugh, 1988. I've been my training's been with a CPA firm. So I don't know about half the businesses that and I don't even profess to, and I don't and what I do is I don't profess to have a creative mind. I don't profess to be a marketer. I don't profess to be, knowledgeable in any of these sectors. But I think I know how a good business works, and I like to think that I can come in and give unfiltered, pragmatic advice or guidance or recommendations and help businesses grow, because there's a lot of, and hopefully I'm not going to offend anybody, but there's a lot of bullshit that goes on in businesses, and sometimes somebody coming in externally and looking at it going, well, that's just garbage and you're just kidding yourselves, and and cutting through a lot of the stuff and being direct and having those starting those uncomfortable conversations that sometimes people don't want to have or they can't have. And it's not because they're bad people, and it's not because they're incompetent. It's just that sometimes you just, it's easier for me to come in, or somebody like myself, or even Hamish, just come in and have those really uncomfortable, gut-wrenching, nervous, horrid conversations with people. Because as an external, you can come in at 50,000 feet in helicopter and just go, I can see something's on fire, but it's 50,000 feet away or 50,000 meters away. But when you're in the trenches, businesses can't see that. So, it's funny, I go in and my wife says, why'd you go in and upset so many people? And I'm not laughing, and it's terrible, and it is gut-wrenching for me, but I think where I value is I'm happy to go in and have those uncomfortable conversations, because I know ultimately it's for the better, it's to make the business or the people better. And sometimes, like I said, as a business owner, it's hard enough to basically do all the other crap you got to do with. Sometimes it's easier to say, Allan, or somebody else, or Hamish, can you have this uncomfortable conversation, or can you bring up a subject matter that the organisation's been dancing around for the last 2 years? And it's easy because you can come in and push an agenda or push a point where other people can't. And that's not being deceptive, and that's not being underhand. It's just the way that businesses work, and relationships work. And I've gone into businesses where people have been working with them, for 20, 30, sometimes even 40 years. People have been working with business owners for 40 years. You can't have that's longer than a lot of people's marriages. People have had that working, and it's difficult for anybody to come in and change that mindset. And if you're in that relationship, it's difficult to change. Somebody else comes in, and it's easy to change. I mean, I make no bones about I have a mentor, and I have a psychologist, and it's not because I'm insane. It's because you do need to have those conversations with people that are just that you can have a conversation that's straight and normal and kind of oh my God, have I done the right thing here, or why am I having such a problem with X, Y, and Z? And a mentor is good, and it doesn't have to be some kind of official personal growth mentor. It's just somebody who knows you, but isn't part of your life. Like I said, I'm very lucky to have that person in my life, and a psychologist, same thing.
No, it's good that you've mentioned that, because I think, especially with entrepreneurs, everything just gets on top of them, because there's a lot happening usually very quickly.
Oh, absolutely.
And it pays to have those external advisors, however that is delivered.
Yeah. And whether it's just over a coffee or over a glass of wine, or it really doesn't matter. You do have to have that kind of, oh shit, am I doing the right thing? Now, 9 times out of 10, you probably are.
Yeah.
But it's good to have somebody else to tell you that.
Allan, that's fantastic. If you want to get in contact with Allan, if you've got any questions for him, he's very happy to take questions. So I'm going to put his LinkedIn profile address up on the podcast website, and I'll also include it in the text of the podcast. So if you listen to this episode now, go to the more info, and there should be a link straight to his page. So Allan, thank you very much. That was very generous of you.
No, thank you.
You've been listening to Off to Market with Scott Farley and Hamish Chadwick.